in. You didn't get in overnight.
Yeah.
Really had to earn it. And the numbers were smaller, but they were powerful. And part of that power is it was divided. A lot of guys were either street guys who did heavy work, violence, or they were money makers. And they had both. And the people that were running it, used the people for what they were best for. At one time, these crews, like I said, when they killed, it was a crew that went, just like the military, Special Forces team. Later on in the years, it got sloppy because they were putting guys together that never worked together. So that was one of So yeah, it was very, very orchestrated and regimented the way they ran things from what I'd seen when I was around it.
So it looks like by having that one family structure, you had operational efficiency, right? And people were in the right role at the right time. Any business or any mafia family that comes into play. Now, what about were there advantages to having a one family? I know Carl and Gambino at one point try to rustle everybody up and make it one.
They still had territories, so technically you belong to a certain territory, and you could do business anywhere, but you had to check with the people you were doing business with. If it was in a certain territory, you got to make sure either you got to split it with the people that in their territory, or that person was already spoken for. You could say no. Now, there still were arguments. There was still, you got to realize, even though it's an organization, there's still a bunch of criminals. They're very headstrong, and they're always trying to get one over on the other one. And that's when you had sit downs. And sit downs when two guys were arguing, you sat down. My dad was one of the best at the sit downs. He always used to tell me, know your opponent, know what their takeaway is. Let them go first, because it's human nature to want to plead your case. Because then I would poke holes in the case. He says, and the guy would start changing his story. Well, who are they going to believe? The guy changing his story or me? So he said, I'd win a lot. And he goes, and sometimes I went in there and lied through the whole thing and still win. So there were still problems, but it seemed to run pretty good.
Now, one of the things I felt that you said was interesting is, which is kind of the modern mob, although your father had many bodies under his belt, and we'll talk about that in a minute, your father was pretty diplomatic. When somebody owed him money, like he treated like a businessman until he didn't need to. Tell us a little bit about that, Frank.
Yeah, well, my father was a good businessman. His only downfall at times or setback was he always wanted everything for below wholesale and sell it for above retail, and he convinced.
That's the Italian way.
Yeah, he's a master manipulator like that. But he did run it like a business. First of all, if you wanted to borrow money from us, we had to know you, or somebody else had to know you. Otherwise, we wouldn't talk to you. We needed to know how many kids you have. Are you married? We want to see some of your paychecks, because we didn't want to bury you. Because if we bury you and you can't pay us, who's going to call the FBI? Your wife. Because you're going to say, oh, I owe these guys money. They're going to kill me. Now, if you have a problem and you come to us, say you borrowed $5,000 from me at 10% a week, you got to pay, a nice chunk every week, and you can't do it. It's just something happens. You come and you say, you know what, I can't pay all this money every week. I would say, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is what my father would do. So I'm going to make your balance $10,000. Can you pay me $100 a week? It'll come off that $10,000 until you're done. Don't miss no. As long as you're paying, my father was fine with that. Now, if you were a gambler or you were out screwing around and we heard about it, then you'd get a warning, maybe a crack in the side of the head and a finger in your face, or, a window broken or something to let you know, hey, don't mess with us. Don't make a fool of us. Only in extreme matters, when you knew you couldn't get the money and somebody was really making a fool of you, was there major violence. And I didn't see that too much.